Hello everyone, welcome to my lecture entitled Ideological Underpinning in Global Economic Order, Global Economy. So before delving deeper into the subject, let us discuss about the concept of ideology. What is ideology? Ideology refers to the set of ideas and beliefs that tends to justify the social and economic relationship of a society. So, moreover, in societies, there are various forces like functional role of individuals and functional role of other peer groups used to justify the moral ethics through their ideology, the order of ideology. The common belief to this notion gives society its cohesiveness, and lack of it creates its turmoil. So, if we look at the ancient order of Roman and Greek civilization, we will find very prominent philosophers like Aristotle, Plato, Socrates, and so on. Now, we know that there was a slavery in entire ancient Europe, moreover in Greece and Roman period. So, philosophers like Aristotle and Plato argued in favor of slavery. They argued that it was a natural consequences, as human beings are imperfect in nature and there are imbalance in human quality. So slavery will last long and forever. So this notion was, and the profession of the slaves were bureaucratic in nature, it was artistic, it were accountants and other administrative and clerical jobs they were engaged into. So now, if we come to the Far East, that is the Oriental order of ancient India and ancient Asia and Southeast Asia, moreover, we will find there are three orders of trade and the philosophies that shaped the trade in Asia. Firstly, it was for the Orientalist Hindus. They have traded long before in Harappan civilization. With the excavation of Lothal port in Harappa, we will find the contemporary civilization was far lesser influential than Harappan, both in size and order, because the Lothal port used to dominate the entire trading route from Arab to Far East. So then the Orientalist Hindus even written Arthashastra, that is written by Kautilya in the Chandragupta, in the age of Guptas. So it depicts the tax administration and economic administration as a whole. It is considered as a landmark book in economic administration. Moreover, during the later period in Buddhist and Jain era, there are Uttarapath and Dakshinapath. Uttarapath, which was connected to the Silk Route in China and Central Asia, was dominated by the Buddhist monasteries. Buddhist monasteries helped Buddhist trader both in influencing in connections and giving logistical support to its followers. Whereas Dakshinapath, which was south of India, has a Jain domination, and Jain monks, order of monks, helped Jain traders to flourish their businesses. Moreover, if we look into the history of Indian Ocean, it was an ancient dominant trading route of the world. In the west, it is Greece, Rome, Arabs. In the east, it is Bali, Sumatra, Java, Thailand, India, and so on. So if we look at the map of Indian Ocean, we will find that Roman used to trade to India in silver coins, in gold coins, and the Arabs used to trade from South India in Kerala, coast of Kerala, in Tamil Nadu. In India, states like Orissa, Andhra, Bengal was previously used to trade with Java, Sumatra, Bali, etc. So, as we see even nowadays also, there was a Bali Jatra which is in every Kartika month in October, they used to start a Bali Jatra when the northern winds starts from the coast of Kalinga, from the coast of Odisha. Even we have found the ports like Tamrolipto, which is nowadays known as Tomluk, used to trade dominant eastern trading routes. Cloves, spices, and other things are imported and exported between India and its eastern counterparts like Java, Sumatra, Bali. We find a large amount of gold stock in India, though the fact is there was no such gold mines in India previously. Still, the stock of gold is much greater to its counterparts of Arabs and Greece. So these are the ancient order of Hindus, Buddhists, Jains in Asian economies. And as I told in my lecture that previously Greece and Rome used to trade with these eastern counterparts. Then comes the feudal and the Christian paternalistic ethnic. The decline of ancient and Roman civilization left Europe empty with its legal protection that the empire had previously provided. The emptiness was filled by the feudal lords of that society, which was a creation of the emptiness of the previous regime. The feudal used to protect the weak section of the people, but at a higher cost. The entire medieval period system was a Judeo-Christian paternalistic society. The society was continued with mutual obligation to each other. That means in one side, the feudal lords was dominant to its weaker section, and on the other section, weakers are highly dependent on the feudal lords. It occurred through the emptiness of early Roman and Greek civilization, and it continues till the mercantilism came to place. The mercantilist society in Europe came in the order in the late 16th century, and it continued till 18th century. The theory of mercantilism dominated the Western economic thought for a long period from 16th to 18th century. The theory aimed to building a powerful nation. The nation-state concept has emerged. They used to trade in precious metal, coins like silver, gold, etc. The father figures of this movement or mercantilism is Colbert in Germany, Thomas Moon in England, and Scottish economist Adam Smith named it the mercantilism, who is a strong critic of the mercantilists. The mercantilists used to expand their empire beyond Europe. The entire colony beside Europe was it was established through the orders of the mercantilist. The main objective of the mercantilist was to empower the nation through its wealth, through its precious metal. They used to stress in the export, and the theory of mercantilist is to expand the export rather than the import. And the main aim of the mercantilist is also to reduce the import, and it was entirely controlled by the state ownership, and they consider the state is at optimal level when there is a rich in its wealth in precious metals and other stock of precious metals. Other contributory factors which led to the later critique of the mercantilist forces that are physiocrats. Physiocrat was a strong critic of the mercantilist. They argued that government intervention is not required in that order. That means the order of the mercantilist. They again came to the conclusion that agriculture should be the priority of the government, whereas mercantilists is emphasis into the international trade, export, import, etc. Then again, physiocrats highly criticize mercantilists of their colonial regime and so on. Physiocrats argued that the international trade is evil, quote unquote evil in nature, so it must not be continued, and it is the duty of the nation to ensure the agricultural output, the stress on land holdings, etc. The physiocrats laid the foundation of the mainstream economics in modern Europe. Then we can conclude that the previous regime was some way or the other influenced the Western Europe and East Asia, Central Asia. Now, the mainstream economics is started counting from the liberal classical regime, which was first propounded by economist Adam Smith. Was a professor in Glasgow, written a book, The Wealth of Nation, in the year 1776. After the book, there was a paradigm change and paradigm shift in the course and the discipline of economics. Then the West started to study economics as a separate discipline, not before Adam Smith. So we consider Adam Smith as a father of modern economics. So the classical era of economics and the liberal classical era of economics starts right from the year 1776. The prominent propounder were Adam Smith, David Ricardo, Thomas Malthus, John Stuart Mill, Jeremy Bentham, Bowick, and Eugene Baum, Jean Baptiste Say, and so on. So now the modern concept came to the light that laissez-faire is the only principle through which a nation can prosper. The laissez-faire principle is known as the free market economy. So Adam Smith was a high critic of the physiocrats as well as the mercantilists, and he generated an idea of laissez-faire division of labor, the understanding of demand, supply, production, and its contemporary issues. Then, after Adam Smith propounded this theory with so many versions of his philosophy, then comes David Ricardo, who propounded a very important theory of comparative advantage. Comparative advantage was based on its sacrificing ratio, or you can say in other words, it is based on opportunity cost. A nation who is expert in producing, suppose, product X should concentrate only on product X, and the other country who is expert in producing Y should give more focus to production of Y. So this theory, comparative advantage, came to the limelight after the proposition of David Ricardo. The very important theory of rent is also considered important in the literature of economics, which was also propounded by David Ricardo. Then comes the utilitarian father known as J.S. Mill, John Stuart Mill. He argued that society is based on utility. This utilitarianism will lead society and it will prosper nation as a whole. So this length of economists argued in favor of free market and free trade of economics, which is known as liberal classical economics. Moreover, it has laid foundation to the modern capitalism of the entire world. The methodology we use to conceptualize economics has changed after this revolution of classical economics. Now come the socialist protest, the economics of Karl Marx. Karl Marx was the most influential personality of all socialists based on his economic analysis on a theory of history called historical materialism. Previously, it was designed, but the most use of historical materialism accurately was done by Karl Marx himself. he write a book called Thus Capital in 3 volumes. After it was published in England, he had get help from his friend Friedrich Engels. After the publication of Thus Capital in Europe, the people of Europe see a paradigm change in the order of working condition, the order of the society, the order of the means of production. Everything changed overnight after the publication of Thus Capital. But Karl Marx not only theorized the part of Thus Capital, he used to rejuvenate the young minds of Europe, and there are various groups or neo-Marxists created in Europe in that period. Marx's writing was highly critical of the classical liberalism. He used to take the irregularities which occurred by the classical liberal order and conceptualize it through the book and defined a new term called the class society. He divided class in various groups and he argued for a classless society, the dominant order and the weaker section. So after the publication of Marx, the entire world divided into 2 axes. One is neo-Marxist, another one is anti-Marxist. So the Marx was pretty much influential in entire Europe. Since the Gramscian model and the Frankfurt School has emerged, Marx also highly criticized by the German revisionist, the Fabian socialist, etc. For example, the Frankfurt School during Second World War previously critical of Karl Marx, that they argued that the rise of the Nazi, the rise of the Mussolini was not mentioned by Marx in his writings, in his books. So the theory of Marx failed miserably in Europe and it went into Russia. Next, the books, Prisoner's Notebook, which was very popular in Europe, it was written by Antonio Gramsci when he was in prison. In Prisoner's Notebook, Gramsci highly criticized the assumption, the fundamental assumption of Karl Marx, because he argued that the turbulent society, the society which has turmoil, the society which is disturbed, is used to take Marx as a utopian concept, and the material relevance of the Marxist theory has failed miserably in entire Europe. Then it has divided Europe into 2 parts. The Eastern Europe used to embedded with the Marxist theory, and the Western Europe decided to go with the liberal order. Okay, now there is a new idea called marginalism arrived in Europe. The idea of marginalism evolved in the 19th century Europe. The concept was originally propounded by 3 European economists, namely Karl Menger, William Stanley Jevons, and Leon Walras in the 19th century. It is based on such economic policies where the decisions are made in terms of incremental units rather than making categorical decisions, all or nothing. Concept that originate from the principle of marginalism gave birth to various economic identities and theories, namely marginal utility, marginal cost, marginal benefit, marginal rent, marginal rates of substitution, and so on. The transformation of marginal propensity to consume, marginal propensity to save, or marginal propensity to invest. The marginalist laid the foundation for the economic mathematician which we see in modern days. The marginalist used to conceptualize marginal cost theory or marginal utility theory, which was prominently propounded by Alfred Marshall. And we know that we take the total cost and through the incremental changes in that cost give birth to the marginal utility theory, which was later criticized by Allen and Hicks in their consumer equilibrium model. After the marginalist, comes a great change in the European economic history. That is, the Great Depression occurred between the First and the Second World War, prominently in the late 1920s. This Great Depression changed the paradigm shift in the policy, in the order, in the previous fundamental assumption to analyze the economy. This Great Depression caused a sea change in the entire world order, moreover in Europe and United States. This Great Depression proved the previous economies as they're highly utopian in their ideas, that previously the notion of demand creates its own supply propounded by J.B. Say in the classical age, but the European depression can cause a serious threat to that idea. Now, the Great Depression was highly observed and conceptualized by the great economist John Maynard Keynes. John Maynard Keynes written a book, The Theory of Employment, The Theory of Interest, and The Theory of the World Order, the national economies. He studies economics is not a micro idea. It cannot be codified into economic laws. So, in his book, John Maynard Keynes argues that demand creates its own supply, rather supply creates its own demand. So, he threatened or he challenged the entire economic analysis of its previous order. John Maynard Keynes was popular overnight. He used to sit in the Currency Commission, which was created by the British in India. He was given various chairs in Europe and United States for his notable contribution of macroeconomics. Though the term macroeconomics was originally coined by John Maynard Keynes, but it was later coined by Jane Tinbergen. Okay, so John Maynard Keynes given a brief idea about the macroeconomic stabilities, macroeconomic variables of a nation. He argues there is a role of a central bank, there is a role of the aggregate interest rate of a country. He gave the notion that the country's employment condition affects the world order and its spillover effect to the other nation. He argued that there are various macroeconomic factors which shaped national economies. GDP calculations, national income calculation has been originated and prominently originated after the theories of John Maynard Keynes, the Depression. He laid down the foundation for the monetary school. So post-Depression, the Chicago School of Economics developed a concept of monetary economies. So the concept of money and the importance of money is felt by economists all across the world. They decided that everything and anything happens in an economy is a monetary phenomena. Prominent Nobel laureate economists like Milton Friedman and others in Chicago School explained the concept of inflation through money, the concept of money supply, the concept of demand for money, and they laid foundation to the rule and regulation and the functioning of central banks all across the world. The central bank used to hypothesize their ideas and used to function in that order of the monetary school. Nowadays, where the central bank functions, it functions in the order of monetary schools laid down by Milton Friedman and other Chicago school. From the above discussions, it is clear that the ancient economic order was radically different from the post-mercantile era. If we look into the order of this dominant economic ideologies, we will find that there are debates, there are discussion, there are dissents among various groups regarding what should be done, in what amount it should be done, where to be done, whether it's perfect for the country, whether it's perfect for the society, and the argument continues. So, from mercantilism to the American Great Depression, the debates were more or less based on whether classical liberalism is required or more government intervention is required, whether classless society is required, whether laissez-faire and free market economy is need of the hour, whether Marxism, marginalism, neoclassicalism gives a clear idea or the concept of ideal society or not. In this was the phenomena of the Europe. But as I told in my lecture previously, that Orientalist order of Asia was bit different in terms of methodology, in terms of discipline, in terms of subject. It was radically different from the order of the Europe. As in my discussion, I've told the methodology is different. How it is different? It is different that the Orientalists never consider economics as a separate discipline, unlike the philosophers of Europe did. Like in Asia, the order of the ancient order, the medieval order, which was mostly a colonial period and Islamic aggression over Asia and parts of East and Central Asia, led to a colonialistic economy in India and other parts of Asia. But in modern colony, like three prominent economists in Asia, moreover in India, has given the drain theory. Like when Britishers used to make colony in India, prominent figures like Dadabhai Nauroji argued that they are draining our wealth, they are draining our economy, they are draining our brain from Asia to their nation, to their motherland. So a birth of nationalistic economy took place in after the proposition of Dadabhai Nauroji, and his contemporaries like R.C. Dotto, Ramesh Chandra Dotto used to conceptualize the entire era as a economic history of India written in 2 volumes and mentioned these things. And his another contemporary, that is M.G. Ranade, who used to give a Swadeshi model before anyone else in India. So these three prominent figures gave birth a new idea of brain drain. They first computed the economy. There are statistical errors, there are statistical issues, but the concept itself was highly praised in England. The order changed accordingly. Now, if we conclude the entire lecture, we right from the classical order to the modern era, that is pre-World War II, we will find the differences, the dissent, the various ideologies, how they reshaped the world order, the world economy, the world thinking pattern, the world methodologies. And we will conclude it by saying that we will discuss the later part of this post-World War era in my next lecture. But before that, there was a highly European and Asian division of understanding economy as a whole. Ideological underpinnings are very important when we are conceptualizing the world order. Ideology is the basic premise where the tools, techniques, statistics, mathematics, and other discipline influence the ideologies to shape the world economy as a whole. The world economy highly relies on these thinkers, the pattern, the influence, the muscle power, the manpower, the various government formation of world order. For example, Eastern Europe was largely dominated by the socialistic thinkers, whereas the Western Europe was largely depends on the classical liberalist. The Asia was a land of the Orientalists, and the organized Buddhist and Jains. Accordingly, the economic functioning of the economic institution, banks, other economic players has changed and have difference in its originations. So as I told that the history of Indian Ocean is a history of economic transaction, economic trading order as a whole. Indian Ocean is the only route from where ancient Greece, ancient Rome, ancient Arab, Orientalist India, Far East has used the Indian Ocean as their trading route as a large. So accordingly, the name of the place, the culture of the place, and the order of the place has changed drastically over the years. For example, if we look into the landslide of Japan, the island nation, it is highly influenced by the other counterparts of East Asian countries, West Asian countries like India, Burma, Thailand, and so on. If we go to the Java, Bali, Sumatra, and other island of Far East or Southeast Asia, we will find the culture, indigenous culture of Indians. If we go to the Lanka, or which is known as Sri Lanka, we will find the Singhali language, which was highly influenced by the northeastern people of India and the Bengalis. If we see the Bali Jatra of Kolingo, of Orissa, and nowadays also it takes place during the month of October, that Bali Jatra, and traditionally the Asian was dominated by India at large, and previously the Europe was dominated by Greece and Rome. Nowadays it is dominant and divided over capitalism and socialism. There are both the sides of the thinkers, from where a force which propounded the idea of classical liberalism and its antiphos, we can say in lighter note, has given birth to the idea of socialism. Both are into play simultaneously. So the world order, the world landsides differ on the very basic facts that there are different ideologies which shaped and reshaped various nations in various times, in various orders. Okay, thank you students for listening my class very carefully. Thank you.